So why don't I get started with just some housekeeping stuff? So first of all, I want to thank everybody for joining the call. Really appreciate it. We hope these webinars are really helpful, informational. They're intended to be both. And the series that we have coming up, and you'll see at the very last of the slides, are some additional topics. We're actually running this program through the middle of October, first week of October so far, and we got a lot of feedback on topics. So this is one of the ones that bubbled up after we kind of ran our first 6 or 8. And now this is all really attendee led, either current customers, prospects, or those that have attended. So certainly would take some feedback for anything else you're interested in. Couple things. Any questions that you have, there's a Q&A button down at the bottom. If you want to put some questions in there as we go across, we'll try to get those addressed either during the webinar or at the back end of it. So with no further ado, Oscar, if you can go to the next slide. So this particular topic on this overlap of governance and privacy is our client, cybersecurity and data privacy is one that we have had at the highlight or forefront of our work with all of our customers and anybody that really comes to us for information. We serve such a diverse group of clients, healthcare, financial services, manufacturing, Department of Defense. And with all that, there are different needs and different priorities, but the one part that is consistent across all is this point. And what we want to try to get out of today is to hopefully, like it says in that overall goal, is really to equip you with some actionable strategies at the back end. So what Oscar is going to do, we'll introduce, he's our CISO, is going to give you some background information and where this crossover is and why it's really come to a pinnacle of conversation where it was kind of lingering in the background prior to that. Oscar, on the next slide. As we always do, and I think hopefully you're starting to see this if you're an active client, and if you're not, this is something that we use with every one of our customers, is this layered approach to cybersecurity. And what we spotlit here are in green some of the things that we're going to be touching on today, or some of the things that in tools or approaches you can use to address both cybersecurity and data privacy. And again, this is not to sit down and spotlight a tool or to sell you anything, but to educate on the areas that would be of interest and potentially concern or comfort that they've been addressed. And what you can see here with cloud governance, policies, data governance, and then when you get into that secure browser collab and email is really enabling or projecting out the enforcement of those areas that you're getting in, and once you're identifying what your data privacy issues may be, what your policies are, and how those would be able to be deployed out in a very seamless fashion, both systemically as well as more obvious to an individual employee. On the next slide, what Oscar and I put together is really, Oscar, just switch slides, is really this critical convergence. So whether we are performing a CISO role or you've got your CISO or someone that's been anointed to be the head of security, this shift of silos, and in that previous slide, you kind of saw the blending of security and IT security and governance and compliance. That's really come to the point where this is a very blended conversation. So we are spending even more time on data classification and mapping. We're spending more time on expanding the processing and awareness of that. We're talking more on the policies and the sensitivity to where the threats are and where they're coming to and what the cause of that is or why that's so attractive. And then you're seeing, which we think is amazing and others can find it challenging, is how that evolution, as we noted there in the third bullet, of the regulatory landscapes, whether they're the ones noted there like GDPR and CCPA, but also state laws around privacy. And you've got some that are leading the way, like New York, California, Massachusetts, are really where other states are starting to use as muses to sit down and figure out exactly what their policies and procedures should be around data privacy. So, like I said, at the back end of this, hopefully we'll give you an idea of both education through the middle and then some actionable steps to take at the back end. Oscar, if you can go to the next slide. So I'm really excited. If you haven't met Oscar Jones, Oscar is our CISO. He also leads manages the fractional CISO team, the virtual CISO team, and also carries a bag, meaning he works for a number of our customers as well. So he has probably one of the best views and been doing this for almost 25 years at this point. But he has a view of this from a hands-on perspective, from a strategy perspective, and from an academic perspective. So I want to introduce you and welcome Oscar to the conversation. And Oscar, I guess from here, I'd really appreciate it.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm going to get a new picture. I've lost weight since this one, so I'm going to get a new picture and send it to Chris, which will give you a true view. Chris knows what I'm talking about. But over 25 years of experience in the IT world, the cybersecurity world, certifications, as you can see, I actually didn't put them all on here, but I do love cooking. I'm actually doing a cooking event this weekend. I'm really excited about, and I love being a mentor. And I've been here at CyberSecOp now for a little bit, almost 2 years. And it only seems like one day, but it's really fun. So we're going to have a great conversation today. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A, and we will answer those as we go or at the end of the presentation. All right, so let's talk about how do we identify the overlap of privacy and security. And there's been a lot of conversations about, what's privacy and what's security. A lot of your information that you may have currently, such as your social security number, your cell phone is private until you start giving it out to individuals. So it's about what do you have today that's private, but what do you actually want to keep secure? So if anyone comes up to you and they say, hey, I would like to borrow your social security number, you're not going to give it to them because that's private and that's part of who you are as a person. So you never want to give that information out. So we're going to talk about the definitions of them, and then we'll move forward. So privacy refers to an individual's right to control their personal information and data and how it is used. While security encompasses the measures taken to safeguard that information from unauthorized access and breaches. Again, some people give that information out readily. I've started doing in-person phishing events where I will tell someone that I'm going to give them a $50 gift card, depending on who the first person that gives me the last 4 digits of the social security number. Believe it or not, there have been several people who have started to give me their social security number, and I've had to stop them because they don't understand that that information should never be given out to anyone. So it does happen, but people don't think about it because it's just a bunch of numbers, but it's some of the more important numbers that you'll ever have in your life. It's kind of like your credit card number. No one would give me their credit card number, but they will readily give out their social security number. So it's about getting individuals to understand the connection between the two. Now, why is it important, right? It's an era of escalating data breaches. We hear about them every single day. Privacy violations, understanding nuances between privacy and security is paramount for both individuals and organizations to protect sensitive data. We all run phishing tests. We have a lot of people that pass them. We actually have individuals that start to enter their data into those components because they're not paying attention. So it's about making sure that individuals understand why they shouldn't give that information, why they shouldn't log into a system that's asking them for their account information. I actually got an email yesterday from Wells Fargo for my account login, and I don't have a Wells Fargo account. So it's taking those steps, and I like to play with the individuals when I'll just put in a random message, and hopefully they'll see it. But people forget about the importance of privacy and security. And what's the overview? So this presentation will delve into historical context, key concepts, technology advances, regulatory landscape, case studies, best practices, and conclude with a few key takeaways that you can walk away from the meeting today with. Now, from a historical context, key milestones, development of protocols, and significant breaches. So 1974, Privacy Act in the US was enacted. It's progressing through the introduction of GDPR and CCPA, each representing significant strides towards stronger data protection. We all know it's key, and we all know that it has to be done. So what are some of the developments? So the establishment of protocols, including SSL and TLS for secure communication, and the advent of encryption technologies have been pivotal in making sure that data is how it's approaching the digital realm. We give out that information all day, every day, and we don't even think about it. So it's about getting people to understand why they shouldn't do that, what steps they should take in case they have had that issue. What should they do if someone has taken their data and they're kind of lost. They don't know what to do next. They don't know who to call. So we're going to talk about all of that as well today. So here's a case study. Examining major data breaches such as Equifax, we all know about that one, serves as a stark reminder of vulnerabilities and the subsequent push for more robust privacy and security measures. And sometimes we actually give out that information. If you think about um, Change Healthcare, that issue was because someone was able to, they went to a phishing event or a phishing website, put in the credentials, and that information was stolen. And, was it stolen if you give it to them? Yes, because the person who's trying to steal that information knows what they're trying to do. So, it happens every day. It's not going to stop. I mean, there's probably a breach happening as we speak right now. So what do we do for that? So what are some of the differences? What is the legal frameworks and what are some of the ethical considerations? So while privacy pertains to the individual's right regarding that data, security is focused on protections in place to prevent the unauthorized access. This is why we have encryption. This is why we have strong security metrics across the board. This is why we have MFA. So we want to make sure that the person who's logging in is the person that should be logging in. And what about the legal frameworks? So different jurisdictions have established, CCPA has been around now for about 2 to 3 years total, depending on how soon you implemented it. And then GDPR started a few years ago, and it's been very effective. We have some clients that are in Europe, and they abide by the GDPR environment and framework. And so it's something that we should do more of. And if you notice, CCPA was probably one of the first ones, and now New York is coming up with their own privacy. I'm pretty sure that what will happen is that most large states will come up with their own privacy programs and frameworks. And then what will happen is the government will come out with their own overreaching framework as well at some point in the future. And so what are some of the ethical considerations? Implications of privacy and security include dilemmas surrounding consent, data ownership, and the moral responsibility of organizations to protect user information. We talk about this every day in our line of work. How do we protect data when it's been given out? How long will it take before it's on the dark web? What do you do if it's on the dark web? So we have those everyday conversations. Myself, we work very closely with the sales team to make sure that if we have those issues, we can almost fix it fairly quickly, but we got to understand how it happened, who did it happen to, how long ago did it happen? So there are certain questions that you have to ask within that process. So we'll go through those as well. So what are some of the technological advances, impact on privacy and security? So role of technology in enhancing security, from AI-driven threat data and detection system to blockchain encryption, greatly enhance an organization's ability to secure data against threats and bolster compliance with privacy laws. We've all seen a lot of AI-driven threats recently. If you think about, how DeepSeek is one of the larger AI components now, along with ChatGPT, along with Gemini, the list is just going to get longer and longer. And it's getting cheaper and cheaper to do it. So you're going to have more and more threats coming your way because of AI, because now all I got to do is put in a certain control and API connection, and then all of a sudden it does all the work for me. And then it turns into a Mickey Mouse, which is basically a preconceived threat model that goes to do whatever the threat actor tells it to do. So privacy concern with new technologies. So you got IoT. Most of us have either an Alexa or a Google in our house, and we talk to it every day. Most of the time, we never put the mute button on, which is how it gains all that information. And then you start to see, pop-ups and advertisements about the things that you were talking about that you had no idea and looking for. But because IoT is always listening with AI, it's collecting that personal data continuously, unless you take steps to prevent it. So it's being collected, used, and shared, and they're being magnified, leading to potential invasion of privacy if not properly managed. We all, have lapses in cybersecurity judgment. I used to ride the train a lot going into New York, and you would hear individuals just having a conversation as loud as they could on speakerphone, giving out either their social security number or their credit card information. And we can, you got 20 people who can hear this, and people just forget about their surroundings at times. So it's about making sure that people are always aware, being aware of your surroundings, being ready for, not talking loudly on the phone, not having it on speakerphone, just those simple things that could prevent your information from being stolen. So what are some of the examples of encryption and data protection? Protocols like AES and RSA encryption are examples of data protection techniques that safeguard user information and fostering trust and compliance in a rapidly evolving digital landscape. It's not going to slow down. It's actually going to get, worse before it gets better. Anytime a new technology comes out, people are going to use it for good, and some people are going to use it for bad. This is expected, but it's something that we always have to be wary of in our world. We see this every day. We just want to make sure we try to get ahead of it as best we can. So what are some of the regulatory landscape laws and compliance? So overview of GDPR, it sets a high standard for legislation globally, emphasizing consent and user rights, while CCPA represents a similar push towards consumer protection in California. And again, most states are going to come up with their own, I would say, within the next year to year and a half timeframe. So what is the impact on businesses? The introduction of these regulations have profound implications for businesses, shifting the operational frameworks to prioritize privacy and data security, often at substantial implementation costs. And what are some of the challenges? Navigating the complexities of compliance with varying legal frameworks, which presents ongoing challenges for many organizations, because it's always going to be something. Someone's going to complain about something that you're doing or something that you haven't done. If an event does occur, how long do you have to take to actually notify that individual or group that an event has occurred? I mean, there's so many different nuances that we have to worry about because of compliance. And as regulatory landscape continues to grow, we just got to make sure we're taking the right steps and we're making the right moves as far as trying to minimize that. And that also comes with minimizing your reputational risk. We all forget we forget about that part but that's really all we have. As a company, as a business, what you have is your reputation to be able to prevent an issue from occurring. And if it does, do you take the right steps and go in the right direction to make sure that it's not affecting as many people as it could? Because we all forget about how easy it is to steal that information, but then how difficult it is to put that back in the bottle. It's kind of like putting the genie back in that doesn't want to go. So taking those steps initially saves us time in the long run on the other end of it when we're having to deal with those issues and problems. So notable incidents, consequences, and lessons learned. So high profile breaches such as Target, which happened, I guess, about 10 years ago, and Yahoo. I was actually working for Verizon right before they bought Yahoo. And I was actually telling someone the story yesterday. Yahoo was a great, great company. And Verizon was going to buy them for $3 billion. But because they had so many issues, so many breaches that have occurred in their environment, they only actually ended up spending $335 million because of all the breaches and the amount of time that they had to actually utilize to correct everything. And that's why they changed it to oath. So it illustrates the dire consequences of inadequate security measures and the importance of robust protocols. So Yahoo and Target didn't have any. Target was more of a physical, let's put a scanner system in several different stores. And I think at the end of it, they found 1,300 devices total because they didn't have a lot of security controls at that time. And so they suffered for it. And then Target became number one again because people forget. Like, oh, I forgot that you guys didn't protect my data and allowed individuals to steal my information. And then as years pass by, your reputation goes back up. And, it's just, unfortunately, that's just how the world works. We forget about bad things that have happened when we're at places that we're spending our money at. So, and then what are some of the consequences of breaches? Fallout goes beyond financial implications. Loss of customer trust, reputational damage, and legal ramifications for failing to protect user data because you have to pay fines because you didn't do it. And, we all do testing, we all do vulnerability scans. And there have been times when you'll do a vulnerability scan or you'll create a risk registry and you'll give that to the customer or the client. And then they'll have several high issues on that. And because they don't do anything with that in a timely manner, those highs now become criticals. So running vulnerability scans, making sure that you understand what's in your environment, what shouldn't be in your environment, who has access, looking at log and audit files are the way that you stay out of the limelight. And I know people always say, oh, um, you know, not all news is great news. I'm pretty sure I'm messing that up, but all news is good, but it's not, because if it's bad, it's going to be bad for a long period of time. I can never get that quote right. I'm still working on it, Chris. Uh, so lessons learned. These incidents highlight critical lessons for organizations on the necessity of proactive security measures, comprehensive breach response strategies, and ongoing staff training, which is essential. You gotta train your staff to make sure that they know exactly what they should be looking out for. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on how much time you're spending. Are you doing training, security awareness training? Are you doing phishing training? Are you doing all of those? Because you got to make sure that you're consistent with it. We've had companies that do it once a year. Those companies usually have a lot of breaches within that time frame because they're not doing it on a continuous basis. So it's about making sure that individuals that work for you, their data is just as safe as your clients. Because if you lose your employee data, you still have the issue of reputational risk. People would go to Glassdoor and say, this company lost my information and data points. And they'll do that in a heartbeat. And then all of a sudden, you'll try to figure out why you can't get great people to work for you, because now they started tanking your reputation, which goes back to our original conversation of why it's important to be able to do everything that we've talked about today. So what are some of the best practices? How do you balance it? So strategies in establishing a robust privacy culture and framework in your environment, implementing comprehensive incident response plans, and regular auditing. And then what is the role of user education? As I said before, extremely important. Phishing attempts happen daily. Managing personal information, empowering them, and making sure that they understand, when they can make a call. They can say, okay, hey, IT team, I just found this particular issue. It doesn't look right to me. What do you guys think? The IT team loves when you do that, because you're making their lives easier to do, because you're spotting things that they may not even be aware of that's happening in their environment. They may not have the best EDR turned on at that time, so they're not seeing everything within their environment. So it's about making sure that people have the ability and giving them the empowered structure to say, hey, if I see something, I will say something. I know we took that from New Jersey Transit, but yes, if you see something, always be able to say something. It's extremely important. And that means that you have to elevate some people in your team to be those overwatchers, so to speak, because they're going to see things that you may not see. They're gonna hear things that you may not have heard. So that it's really about just having the conversation to make sure everybody's on the same page. And from a technology solution, employing advanced security tools, multi-factor, end-to-end encryption can mitigate those risks for you a lot quicker than you can watch it on the screen. So how do you do that? By while upholding privacy standards. So here are some of the key conclusions, takeaways from us today. The intersection of privacy and security is critical with evolving technologies and legal frameworks. Has to happen. You got to work very closely with the legal team to make sure that they understand exactly what you're trying to do and how you're going to do it. I work with several companies where I'm integral in having conversations with their legal team, at least twice a week, about certain aspects of things that they should be doing and have not been doing in a period of time. So what are some of the future trends? As it evolves, AI and security, greater regulatory scrutiny are expected to define the future landscape. And as I said earlier, it's going to get way worse before it gets better. It's just something that we have to prepare ourselves for. And then call to action for stakeholders, engagement from all stakeholders, policymakers, business, senior leadership, consumers, is essential in shaping the secure and privacy respecting digital future. It has to happen. You've got to make sure you're having those tough conversations with the team to make sure that everyone's on the same page. All right, here are some of the actionable takeaways. So conducting a joint risk assessment, identify potential risk and threats that impact both privacy and security. Develop a unified governance framework. There are several out there. We can actually talk about all of those. So you integrate security and privacy policies, procedures, and controls to ensure consistency and efficiency, and train employees on an ongoing basis. Educate employees on the importance of protecting sensitive data and respecting individual privacy. And as we know, not all employees are going to take the training seriously. Some of them are going to do it fairly quickly. And, the question becomes at that point, did they gain anything out of it? Did they actually see anything that they would utilize and not just here at work, but also in their everyday lives? Because we just think about here at the office, but people do things outside of work more than they do at work. So making sure that they understand it and that it's a two-pronged approach. Because if you're better at spotting things on the outside, you're going to be better at spotting things on the inside. So conducting regular audits and assessments as well, identify gaps and weaknesses, and ensuring compliance and mitigating risk.
So, Oscar, I have a couple questions I wanted to ask, coming from the attendees.
Mhm.
And one was sent in for someone that said they couldn't attend, but they wanted me to ask this question. So, taking to account what you said, where data governance as a foundational element, right? And I think that's been the heritage of what we've believed from inception, and
Yes.
then really taking privacy and security as a design element within that. Curious what your perspective is on the importance of identity and access management in this role, where you kind of, you really are able to highlight the critical roles of individuals and how
Yeah.
identity and access management fits, but also data classification and mapping, right? Making sure that we
Yes.
know what the private information or PII information is. Can you talk a little bit about both of those as it relates to
Yeah.
the conversation?
So within identity and access management, it's simple, but it's complex. Are we who we say we are? That goes into correlation of MFA. How do I control the person without identifying them completely? So if I'm logging in, and a lot of times you'll have just your email address as your login, as opposed to say an account number. I've worked with such corporations such as State Farm, and they have a different thought process on identity and access management. Everyone has a control number that is there. It's basically their number from the time they start at State Farm to the time they leave. And then they have a password that they must change every 30 days. Now, those actual connection points, that password has to be 18 characters long. But they take security way more seriously than most because they have a Class A network. They actually the backup for the federal government. If the federal government were to go down, State Farm would actually pick up the controls and actually route internet traffic through their servers. That's how large they are. They actually have their own zip code. But identity and access is really about understanding who is who and what access levels should they have. Extremely important. What are we doing least available, least amount of access needed? Are we giving everyone admin control? That's why we talk about identity and access management. It's extremely important because what happens is you got two components of it. You got the person and then something that they know. We know that they have this account number. We also know that they have a password that has to change every 30 days. But they take it more seriously than most. And so it's really about how stringent do you want to be with your controls and how much do you want to lean into the framework without breaking it? What you want to do is get as close as you possibly can because you don't want to irritate individuals. Um, most most companies they don't have the resources to make that kind of change. Um, and but we're seeing more and more as they implement controls with AI components, they're actually making better controls and they're having more cybersecurity involved in the environment, and identity and access is being actually looked at as something that they can do a better job at. And Chris, what was the second part of that question, sir?
The second part, it's not part of that question. The second
Mhm.
question was, and I know firsthand, it was one of my accounts, our accounts that we worked on,
Mhm.
the importance of tabletop exercises, but specifically we had a company that was
You faded out for a second, Chris.
that really wanted to underscore the need for their IR plan to really explicitly address data.
You faded out a couple of times, Chris.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I was saying was we into privacy implications and
Mhm.
breach notifications as they kind of relate to HIPAA and things like that. So we did that for that one
Yes.
particular customer. That was like first and foremost on their front in their mind.
Yeah, and it changes, right? The problem is that when you have a company that's looking at all of these different controls, it's about how much work and effort are they going to put into maintaining those? Are they going to look at that in a serious viewpoint, take that to senior leadership, get sign off, and then be able to implement those controls within that framework? If it's HIPAA related, they have an easier time because it's really about getting people to sign off after they've gone through a certain amount of training. The second piece of it is, well, even though they have that training, are they actually implementing those controls? Because just because I read something doesn't mean I'm actually conducting that. If I'm not doing that on a daily basis, did I actually learn anything? Did I actually implement anything that I tried to read about within HIPAA? Whether it be clean desk or not taking any pictures, depending on what kind of information they're looking through. But it goes to positive thinking. It also comes around to training that's that challenges the individual's thought process. And for the third piece, it makes sure that they understand the information that they're signing up for. Because HIPAA controls are extremely serious. More and more companies are requiring that HIPAA controls are implemented in a timely basis and people understand the information. And if you were to go to someone and ask them a question about those controls, they can answer that almost immediately for you. A lot of times, and we have, even internally, we have individuals that we've had sign off on frameworks and documentation. But if you were to go ask them about that a week or 2 weeks later, they couldn't tell you. So how important is it for them to do their job, and do they maintain it once they've learned that information? So
Yep.
it's about making sure that they have the right path to answer the questions that are being asked of them, but also implement the controls that they are supposed to be implementing within their internal environment.
Yep. And I have one statement I wanted to add, and then another question. So I think on when we looked at that layered approach, one of the things I believe we highlighted, and if we didn't, we should have, was the importance of employee training, right? Because fostering that culture of security awareness and data privacy is really each employee's responsibility. So we do know that, statistically 84% of all of the breaches or all the incidents are caused by human error. So that part is something that I want to make sure that we kind of get out there. And the kind of the question or the topic to talk a little bit about at the close of this now is, I think, the focus on monitoring, continuous monitoring, threat detection, right? To sit down, and not everybody can afford, the top line of everything, but to sit down and kind of have that awareness of either some kind of continuous, I wanted you to talk about it, some type of continuous monitoring threat detection capability, or like on that secure browser, secure email, secure collaboration side where you're preventing people from doing something silly rather than monitoring management on the back end of something happening. If you want to just talk about that for a second, then we can kind of close up.
Yes, not a problem at all. So, and Chris was talking about Island IO, which is one of our partners. It does do a great job of monitoring to make sure that you can't just go anywhere that you want, and it has it basically puts you into a containerized environment, but it allows you to audit track and understand exactly where individuals are going. And it's not a tool for the faint of heart. It does require some time and effort to put into it, but it's worth it on the back end because now you can track everything that you need to track. You see everything that's happening within the environment. You see if individuals are going to certain websites that should be prevented or attempting to go to the websites. And unless they have any controls that have to be written out and documented for express permission to go to that website, then they won't have it. But you get to control a lot more of the environment, and it allows you to sleep a little bit better at night because now you know exactly what's going on in your internal network. So it's just one of those things that I think is one of the better tools that we will utilize, and we do try to show some of our clients why it will work in their environment. But it's something that Chris can give you a little bit more detailed on. But I just want to take the time to say we really appreciate everyone joining the webinar. And when is our next one, Chris? It's in the 2 weeks.
Yeah, so we're gonna sit down and anytime we could set up an additional one-on-one for anybody, client or not, doesn't matter. We'll provide a recording of this email with the presentation. If Oscar, you go to the next page, it just shows you, in the series coming up, as Oscar pointed out, there's the go to the next one, Oscar. I'm sorry. It just has the next three that are listed, and we're going to be running these through October. So, in the last invite or email, you should have seen something through the Eventbrite site. So, we really appreciate your time. Hopefully, this is informative. I think we've addressed the questions that have come up so far. If there's anything after the fact, you certainly could reach out to us, reach out to me directly, and we will get back to you and share whatever that Q&A is with the entire group that's registered and attended. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Have an amazing weekend. Thank you.